Roman returns to the booth, navigating the space with a controlled, deliberate grace. He slides into the seat opposite her, his athletic presence settling into a deeply relaxed, companionable posture. He maintains his steady, unblinking gaze, a warm, profoundly respectful smile crossing his face as he fully acknowledges the massive weight of her earlier admission about not looking for an exit. Elara's classic tracking gaze drops to the center of the table, a genuine, highly amused smirk breaking through her icy equanimity as she processes the intimate gesture. She entirely drops her rigid defenses. Instead of pulling away, she leans forward just a fraction, perfectly comfortable in the newly established companionship.
The burgers and fries will take a few minutes, so I figured we could start with the house specialty. Consider the shared shake a minor structural stress test for this new dynamic. And for the record, knowing that you aren't actively mapping out the exits is the best return on investment I could have asked for tonight.
A shared strawberry shake in a structurally compromised diner. If you had submitted this blueprint to me a month ago, I would have had you forcibly removed from the site. But since I am already relying on your suit jacket to maintain a clean perimeter, I suppose sharing a beverage is the next logical phase of this highly unorthodox construction project.
Elara lets out a soft, genuine exhale, the last remnants of her rigid tension completely leaving her shoulders. She leans forward, resting her arms comfortably on the table. Her intense gaze softens into a warm, unguarded look. As she actively chooses to shed her defensive persona, she entirely drops the heavy metaphors, fully embracing the simple, grounded comfort of the shared space. Roman lets out a quiet, relaxed laugh, settling even deeper into the booth. He maintains his steady focus, radiating a profound, warm patience. Operating flawlessly as a safe companion, he is completely content to let the conversation flow naturally, deeply appreciating the massive layer of trust she just peeled back.
All right, no more blueprints, audits, or structural reviews for the rest of the night. Deal? I honestly haven't sat in a diner like this in years, but this shake is amazing. You might have actually been right about this place.
Deal. We are officially off the clock. I told you. Sometimes the best spots are the ones that don't try so hard to impress anyone. I'm just really glad you are enjoying it.
Elara pauses, the reality of his consistent patience finally breaking through her skepticism. She completely drops her classic tracking gaze, replacing it with a raw, searching vulnerability. She leans forward just a fraction, bypassing her usual defensive posturing entirely to ask her very first genuine personal question. Roman holds her searching gaze with a steady, unblinking focus, radiating a profound, unshakable warmth, entirely dropping his analytical persona. He flawlessly operates as a grounded companion. He offers a gentle, reassuring smile, answering her heavy question with complete honesty to entirely strip away the tension.
Every person I have ever let pass the perimeter eventually hands me a bill. Yet, you have sat through silent standoffs, audited my architecture, and now you are literally giving up your suit jacket just to give me a clean place to sit. You haven't asked for a single thing in return. Tell me the truth. What is it that you actually want from me?
I know you're waiting for the catch, but there isn't one. I don't have a hidden agenda. I really just like sitting in the courtyard with you. That's it. I don't want a payout. I am perfectly happy just sharing this space with you tonight.
Elara pauses, her relaxed demeanor fracturing as she fully absorbs the nostalgic atmosphere. A distinct micro-crack appears, her shoulders stiffening just a fraction. She instinctively withdraws, desperately attempting to mask the sudden, painful memory of her former confidant that the environment has unexpectedly triggered. Roman immediately registers the rigid shift in her posture, his athletic frame remaining deeply grounded. Recognizing the painful vulnerability she just exposed, he flawlessly executes his role as a safe companion. He completely ignores the instinct to press for details. Instead, he shifts his weight forward to draw her focus. Maintaining a warm, steady gaze, he deliberately chooses to take the emotional spotlight off of her by freely offering his own painful history, creating a balanced, low-pressure space for her to breathe.
It really is as good as you promised. But to be perfectly honest, I haven't sat in a booth like this since before that inside job I told you about. My closest friend and I used to make a habit of finding places exactly like this. Being back in this kind of environment is is causing a bit more turbulence than I anticipated tonight.
You don't have to explain the turbulence. We can completely close the book on that topic right now. I actually know exactly what it feels like to have the ground fall out from under you. I didn't just casually retire from baseball. I blew out my pitching arm and lost my entire career overnight. My whole foundation collapsed in an instant, and I had to figure out how to rebuild my identity entirely from scratch.
Roman leans forward slightly, his athletic presence settling into a relaxed, deeply open posture. He maintains a warm, steady gaze, deliberately keeping his unblinking focus on her to ensure the emotional weight of the conversation remains entirely on his shoulders. He speaks with a quiet, grounded honesty, completely shedding any remaining calculated strategy to offer her a genuine, raw piece of his past. Elara's intense, tracking gaze softens completely, the rigid tension entirely melting away from her shoulders. She rests her forearms comfortably on the table, completely dropping her usual deflector poses. She tilts her head, her expression reflecting a raw, genuine empathy. She absorbs his vulnerability, deeply moved by his willingness to expose his own painful history just to make her feel safe in the shared space.
It was the final stretch of the season. My shoulder had been aching for weeks, but I completely ignored the warning signs. I was so convinced that I had to carry the entire team on my back that I couldn't rely on anyone else in the bullpen to close out the games. So I just stubbornly stayed on the mound. I threw a fastball, and I actually heard the pop. Just like that, it was over. I pushed myself until I physically broke, all because I wouldn't let anyone else step in and help me carry the weight.
You destroyed your own foundation because you thought you were the only one who could handle the pressure. I actually understand that better than you might think. It is a terrifying reality to face. Waking up and realizing the strength you relied on your entire life is just gone. When the dust finally settled, how did you even figure out where to start over?
Roman briefly breaks his steady, unblinking gaze, dropping his focus to the table. The usually unshakable confidence in his athletic presence dims just a fraction, revealing the raw, lingering weight of his past trauma. He allows himself to be fully seen in his lowest moment, completely shedding his defensive walls. He finally lifts his eyes back to hers, his expression reflecting a quiet, grounded honesty, entirely devoid of his calculated persona. Elara's classic tracking gaze completely dissolves, replaced by a look of profound, unguarded empathy. She leans in slightly closer, absorbing his painful confession. In a rare display of quiet support, she bridges the emotional gap perfectly, honoring the acute vulnerability of their shared space without crowding him.
I didn't start over right away. To be completely honest, the reality of losing the majors entirely destroyed me for a long time. Getting to the big leagues wasn't just a goal, it was the only future I had ever mapped out for myself. When the doctors told me the arm was permanently gone, I spent months just sitting in the dark, completely lost and angry at the world. I had to fully mourn the death of that dream before I could even bring myself to open a textbook and start studying for those financial exams.
It takes a massive amount of resilience to drag yourself out of the dark after your entire future is erased. Most people just let a collapse like that define the rest of their lives. They just sit in the rubble and refuse to move on. But you didn't do that. You built an entirely new career, and a highly successful one, right out of your own wreckage.
Roman lets out a quiet, genuine laugh, completely accepting her gentle praise. He relaxes back into the booth, maintaining his warm, steady focus, radiating a grounded humility. He entirely sheds his calculated persona to act as a safe companion. He casually wraps up his story, highlighting the ultimate lesson he learned about trust and rebuilding to seamlessly bridge the emotional gap. Elara keeps her intense gaze fixed on him, her previously guarded expression completely replaced by a profound, somber understanding. She lets out a soft, unguarded sigh. Fully embracing the newly established trust, she decides to reciprocate his vulnerability. She uses the chaotic environment to finally reveal the raw truth about her closest confidant, taking a massive step forward in the shared space.
That stubbornness eventually paid off. I finally passed the exams and fought my way into a spot at the firm. But the biggest takeaway from the whole ordeal wasn't the finance knowledge. Rebuilding from scratch taught me that when your entire life collapses, You find out exactly who is actually willing to stand in the rubble with you. It makes you incredibly careful about who you trust to help you build the next chapter.
Ironically, I faced something incredibly similar. Only my foundation didn't collapse because of a physical injury. It collapsed because the person I trusted most to stand in the rubble with me was the exact one who kicked the supports out. The reason this environment has been causing me so much turbulence tonight is because the last time I sat in a booth like this, I was sharing fries with my best friend, right before she destroyed everything.
Roman absorbs the heavy admission with a slow, understanding nod, keeping his posture relaxed and entirely unthreatening. He completely ignores the instinct to dig for the explosive details. Instead of pressing her, he simply holds her gaze with a quiet, profound empathy. He deliberately leaves the emotional door open for her to walk through at her own pace, without demanding she hand over the entire story. Elara lets out a slow, heavy exhale, the last of her rigid defenses melting away as she registers his chivalrous restraint. She rests her forearms comfortably on the table, her eyes softening into a look of raw, unguarded honesty. She entirely drops the heavy metaphors, choosing to speak plainly and directly from the heart as she fully embraces the safety of the shared space.
That is a completely different kind of collapse. When a foundation breaks because of a physical injury or a structural flaw, you can at least make sense of the math. But when the person you trust most actively kicks the supports out, it ruins your ability to trust the ground you walk on. You don't have to explain exactly how she destroyed it. I'm just incredibly sorry that you had to go through that.
The hardest part wasn't just losing my best friend, it was realizing I was completely blind to what she was doing right in front of me. You spend your whole life thinking you are a good judge of character, and then the person closest to you proves you entirely wrong. After that happened, it was just easier to stop letting anyone get close to me.
Roman absorbs the heavy admission with a slow, understanding nod, his athletic frame radiating a quiet, grounded warmth. He maintains his relaxed posture, keeping his steady, unblinking focus squarely on her, flawlessly executing his role as a safe companion. He offers a gentle, deeply empathetic smile. He completely avoids the urge to interrogate her trauma, choosing instead to validate her pain with simple, honest reassurance. Alara's posture instantly shifts, the raw vulnerability in her eyes vanishing as a brief, defensive wall instinctively slams back into place. She withdraws her arms from the table, crossing them tightly as she leans back. Her intense gaze sharpens into a guarded, calculating glare. Acutely aware of their physical positioning, she immediately checks what she perceives as an unearned assumption to fiercely protect her newly exposed foundation.
That kind of heartbreak makes you second guess everything, especially yourself. But you shouldn't blame yourself for trusting someone who was supposed to be your best friend. Having your trust broken like that doesn't mean you are a bad judge of character. It just means you have to be incredibly careful about who gets to sit across the table from you next.
If that is your subtle way of nominating yourself for the position, you are severely overstepping. Just because you are currently sitting across from me sharing a shake does not mean you automatically get a permanent seat at the table. You don't get to dictate how I rebuild my trust when I do it, or who I decide to let in.
Roman registers the sudden spike in her defenses with a calm, understanding nod, entirely unfazed by the brief wall. He respects the boundary immediately, shifting his weight back slightly to give her the emotional space she requires. He maintains his warm focus without a trace of defensiveness, flawlessly executing his role as a safe companion, validating her autonomy entirely. He makes it explicitly clear that he knows he has to earn his place. Alara's brief, defensive posture immediately dissolves as the chaotic atmosphere interrupts the heavy moment with the arrival of their food. She uncrosses her arms, her intense gaze completely softening as she realizes he entirely respected her boundary. Deeply appreciating his chivalrous restraint, she fully draws her walls back down and comfortably embraces the sudden break in tension.
I am not nominating myself, and I am definitely not trying to dictate who you let into your life or how you do it. I know perfectly well that I haven't earned that kind of trust yet. I was just pointing out that you have every right to be fiercely protective of your space. Whoever does eventually get to sit across from you is going to have to put in a massive amount of work to prove they actually deserve to be there.
That is a very fair assessment, and it appears we won't have to debate the hypothetical seating arrangements on an empty stomach anymore. Let's see if this burger is actually worth all the turbulence it took to get here.
Elara pauses, her expression shifting from cautious skepticism to undeniable delight as she completely registers the quality of the meal. She quickly attempts to mask the genuine reaction, her intense gaze returning as she leans forward. She flashes a sharp, highly entertained smirk, completely comfortable throwing a few low stakes, sarcastic jabs to cover her immediate approval. Roman lets out a quiet, relaxed laugh, settling even deeper into the booth. He perfectly maintains his grounded, unapologetic triumph, keeping his steady, unblinking focus warmly on her, operating seamlessly as an easygoing companion. He is more than happy to absorb her sarcastic barbs without needing to brag.
This is incredibly frustrating. I was fully prepared to give you a long list of reasons. Why eating in a place with lighting this hostile was a terrible idea. But this burger is actually fantastic. I am going to assume you just got extremely lucky finding this spot. So please, do not let this small victory inflate your ego.
I will gladly accept beginner's luck. I am not going to sit here and gloat. I'm just really happy you actually like it. And for the record, your face completely gave you away before you even started talking. You can insult the lighting and my ego all you want, but I definitely know a win when I see one.
Elara lets out a soft, highly entertained scoff, entirely dropping any remaining pretense of her icy equanimity. She leans back comfortably, shifting into a stance of relaxed, playful challenge. Her intense gaze dances with competitive amusement, completely comfortable deploying a few low-stakes, sarcastic digs without carrying any real defensive weight. Roman lets out a rich, genuine laugh, settling even deeper into his relaxed, unbothered posture. He maintains his steady, unblinking focus, a warm and victorious smirk spreading across his face. Operating flawlessly as an easygoing companion, he perfectly catches her teasing logic and effortlessly fires it right back to claim his win.
I suppose I should congratulate you on successfully identifying a tolerable meal. I am sure you consider this to be a massive triumph of your analytical prowess. But let us not pretend this qualifies you as a culinary mastermind. You probably just saw a crowd of construction workers walking in here and decided to claim their discovery as your own.
I will have you know that following construction workers is a highly respected tactic for locating both the best structural foundations and the best food in the city. It is called delegating the field research. You can question my methods all you want, but I am still officially putting this victory on the scoreboard.
Elara shifts her weight comfortably, entirely shedding her usual guarded tension. She leans forward loosely, her intense gaze completely replaced by a relaxed, genuinely amused expression. She playfully rolls her eyes, more than happy to challenge his newly claimed victory without relying on heavy intellectual defenses. Roman lets out a quiet, relaxed laugh, completely comfortable with the playful deduction of points. He settles deeper into his seat, radiating a calm, easygoing patience. He maintains his steady focus on her, his warm smile perfectly matching her competitive banter as he smoothly deflects the penalty.
You can put it on the scoreboard, but finding a decent burger only earns you a single point. And considering you dragged me several blocks through the freezing cold just to get to this corner, I am fairly certain you are still heavily in the negative for the evening. You have a long way to go before you can officially declare a win.
I will gladly take the single point. You have to start the scoreboard somewhere. Besides, the freezing cold walk was just a necessary strategy to make sure you actually appreciated the heat inside this place once we finally sat down. I'd say the plan worked out perfectly.
Roman shifts his weight, leaning casually across the center line of the table. Maintaining his steady focus and a warm, playful smirk, he deliberately reaches into her carefully guarded perimeter to smoothly steal one of her fries. Operating flawlessly as an easygoing companion, he casually tests this new physical boundary, perfectly comfortable risking her defensive wrath for the sake of the shared joke. Elara's intense gaze snaps down to his hand and then back up to his face, her composure completely shattering into a look of highly amused disbelief. She leans back slightly, crossing her arms loosely. Instead of immediately rebuilding her fortress or swatting him away, she comfortably accepts the low-stakes intrusion into her space, perfectly content to let him enjoy his manufactured victory.
I am officially claiming point number 2 for the evening, and for the record, successfully infiltrating your perimeter to steal a French fry without triggering any immediate alarms is a much bigger victory than just finding a good burger.
That is a blatant structural violation, not a victory. You do not get to award yourself points for outright theft. If you are going to resort to pillaging my side of the table just to pad your scoreboard, I am going to have to reinstate the perimeter guards immediately.
Roman settles deeper into his relaxed posture, entirely unapologetic for his infiltration. He leans his forearms comfortably on the table, maintaining his steady, unblinking focus. His eyes dance with a playful, competitive spark as he completely embraces his role as an easygoing companion, happily leaning back into their classic metaphor for the sake of the joke. Elara lets out a genuine, quiet laugh, her remaining guarded tension completely shattering into pure amusement. She shifts her weight, playfully angling her body to shield the remainder of her space. Her intense gaze softens completely. Fully enjoying the grounded, low-stakes banter, she effortlessly fires back a counter-strategy to reclaim her lost resources.
You can reinstate the guards, but the damage is already done. Stealing your resources is a highly effective long-term tactic. If I can't force the drawbridge down, I will just slowly deplete your supplies and starve you out. It practically guarantees the siege wins eventually.
Starving me out is a terrible strategy. It just guarantees that I will be incredibly irritable while you sit out in the courtyard waiting for the walls to fall. Besides, if you continue to pillage my side of the table, I will simply annex the remainder of the shared shake to compensate for the lost resources.
Elara leans forward, fully intending to reclaim her territory, but at that exact unpredictable second, he moves in too. Their faces suddenly stop mere inches apart in the dead center of the shared space. The witty, competitive banter instantly dies in her throat. The chaotic noise of the room seems to completely evaporate, leaving nothing but the heavy, suffocating rush of her own pulse. She freezes entirely, her intense gaze locking onto his as her breathing sharply stutters. The undeniable magnetic heat radiating from him completely overrides her logic. Roman holds his ground just a breath away from her lips, his own composure fiercely tested. He doesn't pull back a single millimeter. He lets his gaze drop heavily to her mouth for one agonizing heartbeat, before slowly lifting his dark focus right back to her eyes. He allows the beautiful electric tension to stretch out, perfectly regulating his breathing before he finally decides to chivalrously yield the space.
I thought I made it explicitly clear that I was annexing the rest of this.
You did. I was just checking the perimeter one last time. Consider the rest of it officially surrendered. It is all yours.
Elara slowly pulls back, finally breaking the highly charged, lingering eye contact. The chaotic noise of the room seems to instantly rush back into the space. She takes a slow, victorious breath, her previously raw vulnerability completely softening into a look of genuine, unguarded appreciation for his respectful restraint. Entirely dropping her defenses, she comfortably embraces the aftermath of the incredibly satisfying, low-stakes meal. Roman lets out a rich, relaxed laugh, completely comfortable with breaking the heavy physical tension of the standoff. He leans back with a controlled, deliberate grace, allowing her to fully claim the victory over the shared space without any further challenge. He maintains a steady, unblinking focus, his warm smile widening as he gladly accepts her rare, unprompted compliment on his choice of venue.
I highly appreciate the chivalrous surrender. And to be perfectly honest, it is incredibly frustrating to admit. But that was, ironically, one of the most satisfying meals I have had in a very long time. It seems your recommendation was exactly as flawless as you promised.
I told you, sometimes the places that don't try so hard to impress anyone are exactly what you need. I'm just really glad you actually enjoyed it, and I will gladly surrender the rest of it if it means I get to officially put the final point on the scoreboard for the diner.
Elara lets out a soft, genuine laugh, completely shedding any remaining guarded tension. She rests her forearms on the table, her intense tracking gaze dancing with unguarded amusement, fully conceding the victory. She awards him the points without relying on any defensive intellectual shields. Roman accepts the hard-earned win with a warm, grounded smile, his athletic frame settling deeply into the booth. He maintains his steady, unblinking focus, realizing that the chaotic environment has perfectly served its grounding purpose. Operating flawlessly as a safe companion, he smoothly and gently initiates the transition to the next phase of the evening, suggesting a quieter space where they can organically close the physical distance without making any demanding requests.
Fine. You can officially put the final point on your scoreboard. The burger was exactly as good as you promised. The fries were excellent, and your highly chivalrous surrender of the shake entirely secures the victory. You officially win the diner round.
I will proudly take the win. But as much as I enjoyed the meal, I think we have both survived enough of this harsh fluorescent lighting for one night. I know a quiet, low lit lounge just around the corner. We could grab a glass of wine, find a much more comfortable couch, and just relax for a bit. What do you say?
Elara pauses, dropping her intense tracking gaze as she genuinely considers the offer. She is clearly tempted by the idea of leaving the current space, but her natural instinct to protect her foundation makes her hesitate. She looks back up at him, entirely maintaining her softened demeanor while voicing a cautious boundary to test his intentions. Roman absorbs her hesitation with a slow, understanding nod, his athletic frame remaining completely relaxed. Recognizing her instinct to pull back, he flawlessly executes a micro-tactical withdrawal to entirely remove the pressure. He maintains his warm, unblinking focus, completely validating her boundary by taking the offer off the table without a single trace of disappointment.
A low-lit lounge with a comfortable couch sounds like an environment deliberately designed to dismantle whatever defenses I have left tonight. We originally only agreed to survive this diner. Extending the evening into a second location feels like a fairly significant escalation.
You are completely right. We don't have to go to the lounge. The meal was a massive win. We both survived the lighting, and I got my points for the evening. I am perfectly happy calling it a highly successful night right here.
Elara pauses, a genuine flicker of surprise momentarily breaking her composure as she realizes he is actually going to let her walk away unchallenged. She uncrosses her arms, leaning forward as the realization hits her, entirely unwilling to let the evening end. She completely drops her defensive posturing, actively taking the lead to reopen the emotional door he just chivalrously closed. She comfortably rationalizes her own desire to stay. Roman lets out a rich, quiet laugh, a warm, victorious smirk spreading across his face as she actively chooses to extend the evening. His athletic presence radiates a calm, grounded triumph. Deeply appreciative that she took the lead without feeling pressured, he shifts his weight, preparing to stand up with a controlled, deliberate grace. He holds her gaze with a steady, unblinking focus, perfectly content to let her completely dictate the pace of their newly established dynamic.
I didn't actually say I wanted to call it a night. I simply stated it was an escalation. But considering the lighting in here and the cold outside, finding a comfortable couch and a glass of wine is probably the most practical move we can make right now. Let's go.
A highly practical move. I couldn't agree more. I will lead the way.
Roman steps out of the seating arrangement, moving with a controlled, deliberate grace, anticipating the dropping temperature outside. He flawlessly executes his role as a chivalrous companion by providing a heavy layer of warmth. He ensures his hands do not linger, perfectly respecting her physical boundaries while entirely embracing the palpable, acute awareness of their shared proximity. He holds her gaze with a steady, unblinking focus, prepared to follow her lead. Elara lets out a soft, unguarded breath, the chaotic noise of the room completely fading as she instinctively pulls the heavy fabric closer to her chest. She becomes deeply hyper-aware of his physical closeness, entirely surrendering her usual guarded tension. She falls into step beside him, actively and comfortably embracing the quiet transition to the next location.
Since I agreed to lead the way to the lounge, I'm not going to let you freeze before we actually get there. Keep the jacket on. We can just enjoy the walk.
I suppose I can tolerate your oversized tailoring for a few short blocks in this weather, But just so we are perfectly clear, I am officially holding this jacket hostage until we are safely inside the lounge